Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. Today's topic will be the impact of Kagaribi. So I know Kagaribi was a crazy tournament, most stacked tournament in the history of Smash Brothers. Definitely within like Ultimate Smash 4 era for sure. So even being more stacked than Civil War, which was previously known as the most stacked tournament. But yeah, I'm Charles, and I'm joined here with Bam, Ramses, Tony. So it's been a while. How you guys doing? We can
Good,
start
man.
with Bam.
Yeah, I mean, good. It's been great. I think it's just been interesting just seeing how the space has been like changing up, right? Obviously, we've had since kind of talked like we're getting more Switch 2 announcements and stuff like that. You see the transition to the plot, like going to a different system, different console. Alongside that, a lot of times people start kind of moving around, trying to figure out what they're doing, whether they're staying in Smash, whether they're staying in fighting games, when they're transitioning to other things too. So it's a very interesting time, I would say, in Ultimate, right? Because everyone was really locked in for Kagaribi, and I mean, not just like as players, but the coaches, organizers are also too trying to figure out how they're going to build out different events. Um, as casters, figuring out what's kind of next as well, and so it's been cool just seeing the landscape kind of like change and people just starting to look at like, okay, the reality situation, where they want to go from there. And then me personally, it's been good just trying to talking to people and like also be catching up on good memories with like Ultimate and stuff like that, and seeing people kind of get excited to play again, just for fun and just have a good time as they're looking for things to kind of move forward. So I've been kind of just diving into that and been traveling a bit more for commentary. So it's been good, man. It's been a good time. How about
Awesome.
you, Ramsey?
Or your Ramses.
Dude, I've been up and down. Lots have happened in my life the last couple of months, but just happy to still be coaching, still on the grind. Worked with a lot of people for Kagaribi. Very proud of their performances, however the result was. So that was cool. I think kind of building on what Bam said, it's interesting to see how there's like people who kind of see the game entering its twilight years, and I've seen that happen twice already. You guys have as well, right? Brawl and Smash Four. And you kind of get the vibe of like, okay, we're in the final stretch, and I've been in these vibes before. I'm starting to feel them again. But what always happens in these final, like, whatever time period it is that there will be a few people who will take this moment to just go like absolutely ham. Whether it's because they've like grown up and now they have more resources, or because they see people play at that high level and they're like, that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm excited. I see a lot of new students who are especially motivated come through, so that's really awesome. So yeah, I've been good, dude. Just been in motion, been doing my thing, and happy to be sitting here with you again, Charles. It's been a minute. It's good to see you
Yeah, it's
again.
been a while.
Few
Thank you,
minutes.
thank you. It's good to see all you guys too. It's great.
How about you,
So
Tony?
for me personally, I am doing fantastic. My routine training and whatnot, my daily relationship with the Smash is probably the strongest it's ever been. Like even just today, this is probably 6 hours into my day, and then I've probably already written at least a few essays for various players who are in Japan. So for reference, the time of this recording, Kagaribi has already happened, as you'll soon identify as we speak about it. But this is also preceding the Kowloon pre-locals, so there's still quite a few North American players that I'm sure we're all still coaching who are still in Japan. And so there's still plenty of work left to be done on that end, and I'm enjoying the novelty of that time zone. So usually there's only a couple players I help who are regular mainstays in Asia, and then it's essentially a game of phone tag for those kinds of players. So having a lot of people in that time zone has been an interesting experience. And then, as Ramses mentioned, there's a lot of people who take a higher burst of motivation toward the end of the game for whatever reason. And for me personally, I'm also one of those people. It's not just at the beginning of the games where I get very motivated. It's also toward the end where I realize there's a lot of value here as you start to see people kind of getting sleepy or losing their own motivation. I
Yeah,
personally
yeah,
find that more motivating because I don't want to be
Hmm.
the uh, the only person who is walking around while musical chairs are playing. And if I see everybody else walking around, I'm like, well, I'm gonna look like a genius when I'm the only person doing it.
True.
Long game.
And
How
in
about you,
fact,
Yeah, I think.
Charles? Oh, Tony, keep going.
Oh, go
oh
ahead.
Sorry.
no, please. I actually want to hear about Charles as well. I haven't been able to see this guy since Genesis, I don't think.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think for me, the impact of Kagaribi, it's interesting to me because one of the things that come to mind when I think of Kagaribi's impact is mid-set coaching, which is something that
Oh,
has not been considered for a really long time, and then like all of a sudden it's back, kind of, or it's back for the biggest tournament, which is kind of a crazy curveball. I don't know if you were able to call people, Tony, during the middle of the sets, or if it was like a crazy time for you, or you, Ramses. How were you guys able to do that, or was the time difference just too nuts?
I was asleep, so not me, but maybe Tony.
I blacked out during top 8, but I was literally like falling asleep at my desk, sitting on the hardest chair I had in my apartment to try and keep me awake. So yeah, I was
Nice.
on calls. I will say it was mostly not for mid-set coaching because I was going into more detail for the event for most players. So it was really funny, like seeing players that I'm spending like hours coaching, and then I would like if I saw the match on stream, then I'd see some person who was not part of that conversation just come up on stage to start talking to them. I'm like, what's going on here? So if
Yeah,
anything, I think that the novelty of mid-set coaching actually made it a little bit different than we would be used to seeing it from. For reference, everyone here was competing and or coaching during a time where mid-set coaching was legal and it was a regular mainstay of tournaments. So like back during the Smash 4 era, Brawl era, it was very normal to have mid-set coaching. And so I think people are losing some recipes on how to execute mid-set coaching.
Definitely losing recipes.
yeah, and we've probably talked about this before on the podcast, but I think our general consensus anyway, since we've all coached before, we know that 90 to 95% of like impact in terms of coaching comes from the prep, not the actual like mid-set coaching. Like I don't even when I talked about this topic on Tweak Talks, I was like, man, realistically, I don't want more than 30 seconds. Like I'm not trying to jam whoever I'm coaching, I'm not trying to jam them with information. Like we've already went over this. I'm just kind of
Yep.
like I come up, throw out some reminders. Maybe if there's like a bad habit or two, throw it out there. But you kind of the mid set coaching part, that to me that's more of like a psych angle where you're just trying to keep the player locked in and focused on the stuff you previously talked about and kind of like refunnel them into believing in the strategy that you like the player and the coach came up with originally for the set. And maybe if there's like slight adjustments that have to be made after seeing information from like game 1, 2, or 3 or whatever, then yeah. But other than that, I feel like coaching is way more impactful in terms of the prep. So
Yeah.
that's the only I guess mid-set coaching. I don't mind it, but it's I it is weird the I don't know, like the public perception that is put onto it
Yeah.
because of the cameras and stuff from before. Because we used to coach before, where it's like, I mean, like there wasn't that many cameras on stage and all this other stuff. It was kind of just like 2 webcams on a tripod, and that's kind of
Right.
whatever, right? Like that's just what you had, and so I don't know. It's weird the public perception on it, and maybe I'm just overthinking in terms of public perception because
Yeah.
I actually don't even know what other people do think when they see that. But
Dude.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying from most of our experiences,
I think
That's-
you're
The
right. Though.
contrast.
I
Okay.
do think you're right.
I go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say like I do think there's a lot of people they see that and they think they in their head, and I will say that there's a lot of people who do like watch Smash and like that probably don't watch other competitive sports or anything like that, right? So in their head, they're thinking, oh, you're just getting this literally hive mind of information, and I'm just being like. Like you're into Matrix or something like that. I don't even know why I said Matrix
Because they download fighting styles, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and they literally think that everyone's just getting it and stuff like that. I'm just like most of these people just think, oh, it's just I know kung fu, right? And it's not, and that's not how it works at all, right? And it's like you already need to understand that at that point in time, you are playing against someone. Like you already have so much of your mental allocated towards that, right? That if someone like introduces a bunch of new information, like just like if someone sits back and you just think about it, right? Think about you're doing a hard task, you're doing all these things, and someone's just like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna teach you differential calculus. You've never had done this before. The greatest math that you've done is probably geometry, but hey, I'm gonna do this right now. Like, even if they were telling you that, and then someone gave you a test on that thing, you'd probably just flop because you're like, you're not gonna be able to really take that, right? Compress that information, really just like, and actually download it and get it done. So sometimes that stuff can even be a disservice, right? Because then you start trying to do something that you actually can't finish and download in time, and then now you're sitting there with the download failed. Like, I'm not going to be able to play that song, so you're cooked, right? Like that was just a waste of time and a waste of energy, right? Versus, hey, this is something that you've already prepped for this. You already are like focused in. You know the tools that you have. Someone being like, hey, like, remember to use this tool. That's a way different conversation, right? Versus, let me teach you a whole new topic, a whole new discipline. Like, that's just not going to work, right? I mean, even if you look at like boxing, right, or in basketball, like this happens all the time, right? And they zoom in on like in boxing, and you'll hear it. And a lot of times in boxing, if you hear some of the stuff they're saying, for a lot of people, it just sounds like, wow, this is the most basic crap in the world. And it's like, yeah, because like the thing is like underlining, you should already know what I'm really talking about and like what you need to do here. We already have a game plan, so it's like, all right, we already talked about how you need to make sure that you are. They have a tendency, they step back in mid range, and they really love leaning into like this down tilt for whatever reason, right? Like then it's like, hey, remember that down tilt is coming. And it's like that might sound generic to someone, but we know we've done the work and all these things to know, like, okay, this is a tendency of this person. Oh yeah, I need to remember I'm still focusing on that, and I'm not getting my mind, disoriented with like other things that I'm looking for, right? And so I love like what Charles was saying is like it's really like a psych thing, right? And it's really like, okay, it's kind of simple reminders. It shouldn't be some grandiose new information, because that's just like, as humans, we're not going to do well with doing that while under stress and doing all those things. That's just a very natural thing. And like the idea is that you're doing the prep, so it's like a little plug and play information that you can give to someone. Do this more. They're starting to do that habit again. Remember we talked about this. This is their defense. Like, they're leaning into it. Make sure you're checking this. Check those jumps, right? Those are the kind of things that you're looking for in that information, and that is going to have a huge impact. Now, I think there's certain things that can have impact in mid-set coaching, but I think that's like the big ones that really change the whole dynamic of a match are usually going to be mid-set coaching that's happening at the lower levels, because it's going to be like something you're just like, you have no clue, right? And it's like, dude, did you know you can just like jab
Well,
and
there's
kick
no
this?
adjustments
You
too.
know,
There's less adjustments that happen at lower levels of play.
Right.
So it's like when you're like they will always roll from ledge, or they will roll from ledge like most of the time. Like the
That
lower
wins
level
you
plays
to
can take
set.
that.
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you
That'll
just
like
win.
take
That's it.
multiple stocks because
Yeah.
there's like less
Mhm.
adaptation and changing that's happening
Exactly.
at lower levels of play.
Exactly.
But then you're the player you're telling this to has lower execution, so shit, maybe they don't even hit the row. I don't know.
Who
You know what I
knows?
mean? It's
Who knows?
it's like a kind of the scaling just goes down on everything. So
In terms of public perception, I think there's also like another layer to it, in a sense that, um, like as a coach, and you guys notice, like you will help people, but what they do with your help is all up to them, right? And like you can set someone up for success, but if they don't put in the work, then like you can lead a horse to water, blah blah blah. And of course, like if you're working one on one with a player, like Charles, what you did with Void, or Tony and Sonics, or what I'm doing with Danny and Semi in the last couple of months, like at that point, you can take a little bit more ownership for results, sure. But at the end of the day, like you don't want to take too much ownership for results, because they're the ones playing, right? Like if they win, it's not like I win. But at the same time, like if you go up to someone and coach them and they like win or lose, and this is something I saw a lot at Kagaribi, because so there was Echo. You guys know Echo. He's like a French coach. He was there in person. Does amazing work with Raflo and Leo. I think he does some really good stuff. And so a lot of people asked him for help. And so there was this moment where he coached Gluto game 5, I think versus Raru with Link. And so he coached Gluto, and Gluto just got like Twitter clipped, and everyone was like, "Oh, this coach goes up to him, and now Gluto loses." You guys have no idea what coaches can do in like 30 seconds of coaching with someone you've never worked with before. And so there's like this balance of like, on one hand, you should be claiming some degree of results, because that helps your like quote unquote social standing, and that gives you a lot of like opportunities in the future. If people look at you as a good coach, then I don't know, maybe Luminosity will pick you up, or TSM, or whatever. But if you claim too much, now you're responsible for shit that you're not that's not even yours. And that's something that I really saw in Kagaribi when I hear the community talk about kind of like the impact of coaches, and that's why I really like what you guys talked about, Charles and Ben, because I think you guys are so right. Like, what can you do in that 30 seconds window? And so sometimes you walk up to someone you've never worked with someone before. You tell them in 30 seconds what they have to do. They have no idea how to contextualize what you're saying. And then they get three stuck by Luigi. That's just the fucking nature of coaching. You have to set up the prep. And then the 30 seconds, it's just the steering. It's just these little bits of steering. So like one thing that I really do want to communicate, if we're talking about like the topic of coaching, is like don't overestimate how much mid-set coaching can do for a player at a high level. I still think mid-set coaching should be very frowned upon at like a local level, because as you guys said, when it's like, like your sub PR players, like you'll find one or two habits they can absolutely like, self-destruct, right? But at a national level, I don't think it impacts the game as much as people think.
Keep in mind is that coaching works on a distribution curve just like anything else. It's that the good old bell. And so when we're looking at it, you're going to have coaching that is abnormally effective, coaching that's normally effective, and coaching that is abnormally ineffective. And so when we're looking at what makes coaching more or less effective, to kind of summarize some of the things that everybody just said, is like something that's very important is the actual retention, the perception of it. So how that was communicated to you, how it was received by the player, and then also their ability to act on the information, also to internalize it so that they can act on it under pressure. Because you have to keep in mind, there's a difference between studying a test, and taking a test in a foreign continent on 2 hours of sleep with people screaming in your ear. These are a little bit different from each other.
While everyone is saying this is the final big ultimate event, so you better perform. If you don't perform at this event, ultimate's over. Ultimate's over. Like there's an insane amount of pressure, right? Like
adding in that extra context, like this part of the public perception as well, is like that's not real. So for me personally, I without exception, every single person I was working with going into this event, I explicitly downplayed the importance of Kagaribi. Not because I think it's not an important event, it's because it's just an event. No matter how big or how relatively big it is, an event is an event. It's not even the only event that most of the players who are traveling there, who I'm working with, are there for. Like it's one of two, or in some cases, like the better part of 10 tournaments that they're competing in while they're there. Are you going to run out and gas yourself out so that you're exhausted after like one or two tournaments? That's foolish at best. You're going to look foolish. Everybody else is still running the marathon, and then you're going to get last place, last place, last place, last place. Is that what you go to Japan to do? So generally what you want to do is you want to pace yourself. You want to set yourself to play well. Again, going back to the distribution curve, you don't want to play 100% the best Smash you've ever played in your life. You want to play like 80, 90% the best Smash that you've played, not because you don't care about those results, but because what does it mean if you really are doing the at most 100% effort that you are physically capable of? And generally what that means is that you're pulling resources from other parts of your life. You're essentially going to burn out if you do hit 100. And if you're not burning out, then you probably didn't actually hit 100. Part of how we determine what 100 would be is that you didn't have anything left in the tank. You could have given more, or you can't. And so what we want to do is we want to pace ourselves and go in. So taking this back to mid-set coaching, what are you really going to be able to do in 30 seconds? Like if it's going to make a big difference in your gameplay, then what the hell were you doing for the previous 3,000 hours that you were preparing for this event? Like, were you just sitting on your thumbs? Were you watching the Smash title screen? What are you doing? And so realistically speaking, as was said before, most of your training, most of your preparation is already done walking into there. So even just using the Gluttony versus R.O.B set, because I was part of that preparation, for me personally, I actually went through with against R.O.B with couple of players who didn't run into him in bracket yet. Well, one of whom did run into him and beat him in bracket, but the habits that I observed, certain patterns, certain reflexive triggers for his behavior, including versus Link in particular, were things that I had already had and wrote down for gluttony. And to be clear, gluttony is above average, very far above average on his ability to take information and then act on that information. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have sufficient ability to communicate that information for gluttony to then take that in and have that internalized. So even if he's one of the best in the world at receiving and acting on it, that doesn't necessarily mean that my work with gluttony is going to be adequate. And even if I am above average at acquiring and then portraying that information, maybe I'm better at portraying that information with one player than I am with another player. It's going to be individualized. It's going to be related to other factors that we're taking into consideration. So, like, I had 3 hours with gluttony versus 30 seconds of echo with gluttony. You can't really compare those two things. It's apples and oranges. And then also, echo probably is much better at communicating with gluttony than I am. There's all kinds of forms of language and ideas. Echo's probably spent more time with gluttony on a personal level to be able to communicate with him and understand him and how he's going to process information. So there's different advantages and disadvantages that we each had in contributing toward that set count. And whether it is a game 5 3 stock or not, maybe that was actually still the play to go for, and they decided to gamble on mix-ups. If you go for something like, well, I'm going to win the game or I'm going to lose the game on this, and you roll heads, let's say 3 times in a row, it's going to look very foolish, but in practice you could have 3-stocked them just as easily as you got 3-stocked. That doesn't mean that it was a bad plan to do so. You can't just look at a single individual example and say this is what it's going to look like if we do this 10 times in a row. That's just not how it works. And whether things are successful or not depends on what we want as an outcome and the consistency on what that outcome will be. So if something's going to have you get 3-stocked a third of the time, 3-stock them a third of the time, and then you win the other third of the time, I recommend going for that because you're still going to be winning most of the time. But even if it was something like you still win those 2/3 of the time, but if you don't win, you get 3 stocks, I would say you're still supposed to do that because that's going to give you a high consistency of win rate unless we have something better. So it's all about opportunity cost. It's all about, well, if you're not going to be doing this, what are you going to be doing instead? And so for mid-set coaching, you want to be more efficient because each second matters more. So even if Echo and I were there in person, I would probably, well, first of all, I would be communicating with Echo and we would discuss what ideas need to be communicated in the first place. But the person going up on that stage would still be Echo because the person who's probably better at communicating and portraying those ideas is going to be Echo because I acknowledge that he is going to be more effective at that than I would be. And so recognizing which team member is going to contribute the most because that's what a coaching relationship is. This is a team effort. It doesn't matter if I'm the best coach or the second best, third best, whatever. The 10th best coach isn't going to make any difference if you have the worst player up on stage. It's the person who is playing the game is the person who makes 90% of the results, regardless of what the coach is inputting. That doesn't mean that it's not important to find a better coach than a worse coach, because there is going to be a big difference, but you can't measure that outside of it acting as a function or multiplier toward whoever's on stage. So to that end, the point I'm making here is that there are so many variables that go into what mid-set coaching is going to be and how it's going to affect. But from the audience's perspective, the only thing that you're really going to see is one person with a face go up there, stand there for 30 seconds, and then you're going to see them go down, and then you're going to see a match result. And most people who are watching Smash don't understand Smash above a mid-level at best, by definition, because if you're looking at that curve, most people are going to be in the middle of the curve or below average on the curve. And so they're not going to know what they're looking at, and they're just going to see, well, A plus B equals C, therefore A has some measure of value on C. When in reality, you could actually be a terrible coach and they could be winning despite you or losing despite you. These are very small variables among many variables that affect these results. And I shouldn't even say results because it's more of an outcome. Just because you are playing better doesn't mean that you're going to win a set. If your opponent would normally win that set and is also playing better, does that mean you're improving? Yes. is there a relationship that we can judge based on the victory screen? No. Results and outcomes are different things, even though they're similar. And so what we would have to look on is we would have to have enough knowledge, enough intimacy with the situation to actually gauge, well, which variables actually affected this outcome.
Yeah.
Like what maybe Raru was better at making these reads. Maybe Raru's combos were on lock more than not. And I think that's something else that affected the gameplay in that tournament in particular was a lot of the players who stayed in bracket had games where if my combos are on lock, even if you're playing well, you're not going to beat me because me playing well is more important than you playing well because that's going to be more effective on the game state, that game board. And I think that's something that is also worth discussing. Charles, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the meta is in an interesting place. It's like, I mean, Ramses was talking about earlier, just knowing when the final era of a Smash game is coming through. Usually, the biggest one is when the next Smash game gets announced. But like for Brawl, that happened way before that because the gap was so big. I think for Smash 4, it was the announcement of Ultimate that kind of got everyone like, yeah, I'm kind of over this already. I'm just gonna wait till the next game. So with Ultimate, it's weird because we don't have the announcement for the next game, but we can kind of go off of patterns from the previous, console release, which was the Switch, right? So we can kind of gauge like, probably like a year or two from now, right? There, we do have some curveballs in terms of like, oh, Sakurai was involved with Kirby Air Ride in terms of timeline, so that's like kind of the only thing we have in terms of information with what Sakurai. But who knows how involved he is going to be even with the next Smash Bros. He is getting a bit older, so he might be his involvement might be less. But I think the main point for me is when I look at Kagaribi, here I'll actually link into the chat here, the results from like top 90, 192 and 64 from Rose Bloom. Shout out to Rose Bloom. She always do an incredible job of getting results. Let me link the 4 as well. Top 64 and boom. So I think the meta is moving into a direction where we all kind of assumed this, where Steve would be a lot stronger as time goes on. What do you know? We were right. I'm not even gonna. I'm not gonna make this episode about complaining about Steve. People definitely don't like me doing that, I guess.
Yeah.
I read a bunch of mean comments on Tweak Talks. They always
no! Don't bully Charles. What the heck?
Cry emoji. Okay, but I think it's interesting because the characters that we see that are having consistent results are characters like Steve. I think that's just like overtuned. Like we can look at that and just be like, okay, it's overtuned. I can't like judge the entire meta off this one character, but like this character is clearly overtuned and above the rest. So it's just this character is strong. It's so interesting to me though when I'm looking at characters like Luigi being consistent right now, which is so weird to me because I just never. To me, Luigi's a big curveball, and like one is one of the characters I didn't predict to be a very powerful force towards the later game of the meta. I actually felt like Luigi, Kazuya, characters like that would start falling off the later in the meta we get because it's like, okay, you have overtuned punish game, but like, can you get the hits in neutral? Can you get back on a stage? Do you have the disadvantage? And I think for a lot of us, a consistent disadvantage is important. So like things like bouncing fish and monkey flip, broken bayonetta recovery in Smash 4. Like the only character that didn't have a great recovery was Cloud. So there are exceptions of like bad recovery, but your strength is so good it covers up for the bad, right? Fox, Cloud, just any other character with bad recovery. Look at Min Min, and like that was back then, but now in this era, look like Min Min, stuff like that, right? Where when I see Min Min and I see Luigi, and I'm like, man, the recoveries are just so bad. But Luigi gets an opening, and the Luigi's consistency is not just from the fact that it's like, oh, I can 0 to death you. It's like to me when I'm watching Luigi, I'm like, man, this character just takes your stock at like almost any percent, depending on the situation. It's like, oh, okay, cool, you got chip damage. Like, oh, I grabbed you at 60 or 70. Down throw. I don't know if they have to like. It seems like they have to read DI, and then it's like, okay, did I read the DI? I get the up B. If I didn't, then you have to like cash out with back air or an aerial or something. But I'm not exactly sure on the exact framework of Luigi down throw. But essentially he can like reverse nair or throw into like aerial up B or up tilt, right? Like he has these things that combo
down
into
tilt, up
aerial up
tilt.
B.
Yeah.
Or things that combo into the thing that combos into up B, like
Mhm.
Luigi down tilt grab into up B and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's like weird where characters are finding consistency, and it's kind of like in different categories, in my opinion. I think Game and Watch and Min Min find consistency because like their advantage state is so consistent, and I don't know, man. These like it really sucked to watch Tweak lose Zockle, and
Yeah.
I felt like, and I mean that to me that's the set of the tournament. And again, I'm not gonna just sit here and complain about Steve, but it just felt like Tweak was doing a really good job as someone who appreciates specifically neutral probably the most in terms of the aspect of this game. I watched Tweak play really really good neutral and still lose, and it's just like egregious reversals, right? And like it's also interesting about Luigi is his like when I think of Luigi, I'm like, man, should just getting destroyed off stage. But Luigi's defense, at least Luigi has defense with the down B being a
Mhm.
frame one out, because your air mobility is also kind of ass too, right? And your fall
Yeah,
speed.
yeah.
So like this character's disadvantage is really ass, but then you just have that one, like you're almost taking it back to Smash 4 where you're like, okay, cool. Let me you hit me, coin flip. We're gonna flip a coin, and I'm either completely out of this scenario or you're just there's also I guess it's not a coin flip, but it's like a three different options, because you also do nothing if someone over respects you. Luigi just lands, right, and gets
Yeah.
out. So there's also that. So but then Min Min, no defense at all. Like you're spec all into offense. And dude, watching Dormigi execute advantage day
Just
with
cook
Min
people.
Min it's like crazy. And I feel like we're getting to that point of the game where these game plans are so refined and players are executing them so well. We're seeing a certain group of characters slash players get consistent results. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting. Like we didn't see Rob in top 8, but even when we're looking at the
4 of them in top
we did have a
64.
lot. We
Uh-huh.
did have a
Yeah.
lot.
Yep. 6
So
thieves, 4 robs, 4 ages. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so we'll go top 192 for the audio listeners.
Okay.
14 players were Steve, 9 players Rob, 7 players Diddy Kong Kazuya, 6 players Min Min, Game & Watch, Snake, Fox, Falco, 5 players Luigi, Pyramithra,
Oh shit, ages did
Olimar,
well.
Ice Climbers,
Yeah, no,
Ice
Age
Climbers,
is
Because
up there.
Sonic.
the thing about ages is like they had 4 players in top 64 and 5 in what was it, 190, 192?
Yep, that easy cooked.
Yeah, just one of them dropped out. Diddy's on the other hand, 2 Diddy's in top 64, 7 in top 192. Ooh.
So I want to be clear for people who might not be familiar with how to evaluate metagame efficacy. But in this case, generally what you want to look at is you want to look at what a broader sample of the field is. And then as the field becomes narrower, you want to look at what percentage of the field is
Yeah.
staying in bracket. So while, yes, it looks very big that Steve is far and away the most populous character in the game, you want to consider that going from 14 to 6, the character is losing the majority
significant.
of his representation.
Mm-hmm.
Rob going from 9 to 4,
But
he's
a
losing the majority. Yes.
percentage wise, it's an uptick, right?
Uh,
Percentage wise.
Oh, percentage of the total player base, but Tony was talking about the
Like
percentage of the total Steve players. Like
Players.
they're losing over half their total Steve players.
Yeah.
yes.
Versus like
Well,
Aegis.
right, but-
Aegis was pretty crazy. 'Cause
Rob-
what?
That's exactly what I'm getting to. Is like
Yeah.
Oh, I
ages.
see, I see.
But
keeps
Charles
80%
is also
from-
right in that you can also look at the percentage compared to like 14 out of 160 versus 6 out of 64, right? Like that's still like a really good percentage of the total players
It
that's
is
playing.
it is a positive percentage
Right.
conversion rate,
Right.
but the best conversion rate is definitely Aegis, right?
Ages is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, they have like the best percentage, but like I'm just saying that it is still impressive that almost 10% of the players in top 64 is like that's pretty wild.
I have a conceptualization about why like Steve and Kazuya and Luigi and Mario even are doing well as like Min Min, etc. Because I feel like with the point that we're at, advantage states that are kind of like, kind of like slow burns, like a Cloud, right? Who wants to just like upper you once, Becker you once, upper, right? Like that kind of advantage state. We don't really see that succeed in that game. In Smash 4, we saw more of that. Like Corrin and Cloud could literally like juggle you for days. But in this game, most advantage states, like you get your guaranteed stuff. You might get a hit, maybe two if you're really good, but most of the time, by then you get reversal, right? And I think this dynamic is way worse for sword fighters than it is for like brawlers. Because when brawlers reverse you, like Luigi, like Kazuya, etc., like they're gonna like Steve roll in, up tilt, you're dead, you're gone. Marth rolls in and then rolls away again. You know what I mean? Like just reset the neutral, get me out of here. And so the whole reversal dynamic that we're seeing in Ultimate just really favors close quarter combat characters. And then a character like Luigi who has like roll in, down tilt or up tilt, or like parry up tilt, or like stuff like you said, Charles, right? Like very, very solid fast options into kill. Really powerful. And then on top of that, what we're kind of seeing is as kind of like the pacing of the game fastens, right? Like we're playing at a faster and faster pace. People get more clean, but what we're also seeing is like there's just more room for these tiny little openings for these close quarter characters to get through, right? Like Spargo, you short out Becker in just the right position as Cloud, like you're getting blown up. This is also why I think Tweak does well, because Tweak is one of the players who is very attached to the quality of his decisions. I'm sure you guys would agree. He makes like very high quality decisions, but that does mean that
he has said that he cares about how his gameplay looks like.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, I think that is I like to him, he doesn't want his gameplay to look
mashy,
sloppy,
yeah,
mashy or whatever, right?
Right. And so like he has high quality decisions, but that also means that he plays a little bit slower. It also means that like you cannot really catch Tweak on like sloppy decisions as easily as a Spargo, even if you like a Spargo, arguably better player. I would not disagree if you think so. I think in terms of the amount of mistakes that the player makes, in terms of just like the quality of decisions, I think Tweak has some of the best in the world, and I think that makes it so that he performs so well in a bracket full of characters that are looking for these small mistakes. And so in this dynamic where you can kind of like win neutral, kind of, I don't want to say accidentally, but out of nowhere. Let's put it that way, right? You can win neutral out of nowhere. Like it's really good for these close quarter combat characters because as a mid-range fighter, as more of a sword character, even something like a Joker or a Wolf who are very close to the archetype, right? You can control neutral, and then you make one small mistake, you die. And even if you hit them, you make one small mistake, you die. And so it's just the consistency of neutral game dominance as well as the consistency of advantage states so far has not shown to be strong enough to compensate for just the sheer guaranteed reward that these characters get. And I think that's what makes these characters so powerful. Like, even like a Game Watch. Yeah.
Yeah, being able to maintain that. Yeah, I mean, I think also interesting enough too, like like you were saying, right, where like how juggling is like really interesting in this game in comparison to some of the other previous titles, right? Where it's like you definitely have a bit more options. So like some of these characters that you initially looked at and like would be like, okay, well, yeah, their off stage may be bad, but also their juggling is going to be really bad. But like because it's like a little bit easier to get some of these reversals and kind of have those situations where you can convert that into damage, it definitely creates a different dynamic. And so it's really interesting to see at the end of Ultimate that you're seeing these characters rise because I think it speaks to what we've always kind of said, like in terms of like the offense, right? In Ultimate, right? I do believe there's more. I do believe players can still be better and more fine tuned with tackling like defense. Like I feel that even when I was watching Kagaribi, there's definitely some instances I'm seeing, and I'm like, man, this Luigi should not be getting back the way they are. So I do think there's a lot to be had there, and I think part of it has to do with like, I think that's always been something that's been just slower to push forward in Ultimate on the defensive side because of the reward you get from offense, right? And it's like people just kind of spec more into that, right? And so there's a lot of times where some of these characters, I feel like they should just be getting punished for these things off stage, and they just don't get punished nearly as often. In most games, traditionally, what happens is the game is extremely offensive in the beginning, and it's like once you get to the end game, it gets a lot more defensive, right? But we just see these characters continuing to rise, which I think is a really interesting note for Ultimate.
Also because their defense is good, right? Because if you want to break open Luigi, you're risking entering Luigi's range. Yeah. So you're right. Like, I agree entirely. Just wanted to add that a little bit.
The risk reward is just so much in their favor. Like I'm gonna keep it a buck. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but the stronger characters to me, the more I'm seeing them executed well, I'm like, dude, what the like I don't know in terms of like the to me ultimate tier like the tier list felt more squished. So it's like the like just more balanced in general where like the best character isn't as far as the bottom character. Like obviously there's a large gap, but if we look at something like Smash 4, the best character versus like the worst character, right? Or like even Brawl, there's base game mechanics that was like, oh, you can't grab the ledge. So like, sorry, Mario, you actually kind of like don't even have a recovery. Like that ain't even, that's barely a third jump because you need to get onto the stage, right? But then, recovery's got more balance and stuff. I don't know. I've always said Ultimate is the most balanced Smash game. And it's probably still true, but I'm like starting to doubt that because I'm watching Min and Game Watch do stuff, and I'm like, and it like this isn't like me not even bringing up the character that spawns terrain. Like this is me just talking about Min, Game and Watch, and I'm just like watching them run like run advantage state. So it's like okay, cool, and also another thing to note too, it's like these characters. I feel like since everything is put into one basket, you just got to be really good at that one thing. Cool, you suck at recovering. I watched Doramigi get reversaled off stage because he's going for an edge guard at level up at 0%, dies, then spawns back in and just goes right back to it. Didn't even phase him. It doesn't like
He's like, well, what up?
it didn't matter because it's like at the end of the day, I just need to hit you 3 times in neutral, and if my advantage state is clean enough, like he's a younger player, so just goes for it every single time. And it like to me, it's like when you can just put all your specs on one thing. And not necessarily that's the only thing you have to be good at, but it's like, okay, this is my game plan. This is what makes my character strong. If I can press B at the right spot as Game & Watch or like set up falling up air traps as Game & Watch, boom, huge check mark. Now I just got to have neutral. And then like every time I win neutral, it's very, very high impact. So when you're taking the risk rewards in neutral, and I mean, we're talking about Game & Watch, so are you actually taking a risk when you run up shield and you're just waiting to up B, right? So it's like all these things just makes your gameplay so consistent. And then I'm watching players like Tweak play Diddy Kong, and I'm like, man, you can win neutral so many times, but the risk reward for and the impact that you get for winning said neutral, it's kind of not there.
You fought for your life for 30%, and I coughed and got 100.
So. Right, I'm not trying to be doomer about the meta.
Right,
but
no, it's not doomer, but
it is interesting where the path is going because it's like I'm seeing certain patterns in terms of like, okay, there's just the overtune stuff, but then there's just really solid advantage state or overtune punish game, and it's like does the reward have to be really really high in ultimate for your character to be relevant, right? I'm trying to cross reference all this information, but yeah, what are your thoughts, Sony, on the current characters that are doing well?
My first thought is that Tweak's Diddy Kong is still in the top 8.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Regardless of all that, here is the warrior. He's fighting, man. He's out there.
Yeah. So
fourth is still
like you
got
can't.
Fourth, right? Yeah.
Yes, you can't. It's not like we're talking about this poor low tier not making it. This is the hardest top 8 ever made. This stacks one of the least diverse top 64s we've ever had, with only 43 unique characters in the top 64. I think we're doing okay. People might not necessarily like some of the gameplay patterns, but I'll go ahead and make some incidental observations that I don't know if they're actually relevant to anything, but just things to note is like, of the characters that don't really have significant touch of death, so things like your Diddy Kong, your Min, which I will say, I'll actually rephrase this before somebody actually is me. The characters that win not off of hit stun advantages, but from perpetuating positional advantages until the stock is gone. So your Diddy Kongs, your Sonics, your Min, etc., etc. So not your Luigi Steve combos where they breathe on you at any percent and you might have lost the stock. Like these are a little bit different. So those characters, some things that they did have in common is that when they did have things like juggle situations to deal with the lower air mobility of the touch of death characters that are making it past there. So that is a weakness that Ramses mentioned that is pretty common among the rest of the characters that did make it up there, is that they have lower air mobility. And they're pretty vulnerable to getting toward things like center from off stage. So the quote unquote positional characters, these characters all have ways of converting their juggle positions into horizontal facing finishers. So this is going to be things like your Sonic and Min up Bs that allow you to go much higher than normal full hop double jump scenarios would. This is going to have things like Diddy Kong being able to basically hit you well above him with banana toss upward into double jump back air, things like that, where they can get true confirms to actually prevent you from being able to reversal to center. And I think that I haven't studied the footage or anything, but if I had to guess, I'm willing to say that when that didn't work, it was because they were going for a little bit lower reversals. So things like minecart through, so that banana toss up is less of an issue. So now Diddy Kong has to actually just directly go for back air, forward air instead of using his more disjointed projectile, where Min can't use quite her forward air or back air, and she also can't use her up B. There's a little dead zone just above where these characters can't quite force. So we'll say about 45, 60 degrees up and diagonal to the side. So I think that the characters that manage to still get through there are characters that are capable of recovering to center through those positions with minecart. Obviously, Game & Watch up B is going to enable you to do that. And then Luigi, not so much, but Raru was getting away with it and trying, God bless him, versus a lot of players. So something else to keep in mind is to kind of mechanistically, or a mechanistic alternative to what Ramses was saying about the sword characters versus the brawler characters, is that some things that these characters have different is that when you're playing fast with sword characters, you need to make decisions between the swings that aren't necessarily relating to the position. They have more variables to it. Is my opponent going to be in this spot or that spot, for example? Whereas the brawlers typically chunk their decisions and are able to buffer their actions a bit more. Like when you are going for a roll and up tilt, that's not something that sword characters are generally looking for, like he mentioned. It's I'm going to roll in. Do I need to reposition or not? Luigi is not thinking when he rolls in, do I need to chase them down now? He doesn't really have the option in the first place because he doesn't have the mobility. So the types of decisions that they're making are more strained, specifically towards time when you're playing with swords. So your reaction times are penalized for the input delay a little bit more when you're playing sword characters. And so I think that ultimate on an input level actually debuffs positional characters more than the quote unquote master characters because of this effect. And something else to note is that when they do go for their safe pokes, so something like Cloud back air, that there's a little bit more commitment to swords on frame data wise than there is toward the brawler characters. Like if Cloud does roll and up tilt, it's going to be more committal than a Luigi roll and up tilt. Even going into Cloud back air, it's pretty comparable to Luigi's optimal landing back air. Like it's not like their optimal situations are that frame advantageous. So like the point I'm making here is that like you're not going to go in there with Min and expect to be able to rush them down. It's a matter of you need to keep them in places where specific contexts or relatively specific contexts apply. Whereas if Luigi goes for roll and up tilt, he can just shield after. Whereas if Cloud shields after, he might not be able to position for his strongest tools. It's not possible for Cloud to go for an optimal landing back air out of shield. He needs to reposition into the air and then drift down. Whereas Luigi is still capable of going directly for shield grabs. He can go directly for down tilt, etc., etc. And to that nature.
Yeah, to kind of build on that, I feel like because of the input delay, right? Like we're still seeing people make small mistakes. And so even when you react to like a roll and you know the up tilt's coming and you go for the punish and you're wrong, like Luigi's just gonna, right? Luigi will kill you for that, as Tony said, right? Like these characters have access to their really strong tools in a lot of different contexts, but it's especially annoying when you're trying to punish things and it's just like just on the line of possible, but you kind of have to start punishing these things because if you don't put pressure on them, then it's way too strong of an option, right? But every time you put pressure on them, you have to be 100% on point. And that's part of it too, is just like the fact that later on in the bracket, we see people just like, you're just going to make a few more mistakes, right? Like you're running lower and you're gonna be a little bit more sloppy, and that's where these like I've said this before. I think Snake is the best character in the game at a local. If you come home from your 9 to 5 and you have to play versus Snake in grand finals with your local, that's the best character in the goddamn game. Like,
Yeah.
I see, like after the 5th grenade, I just start tuning out and thinking about going to bed. You know what I mean? Like, so imagine like the grand finals of Kagaribi, you're up against Luigi, and you've punished every roll in up tilt, and you've like outspaced it perfectly with your Diddy Banana, and then you mess with ones and you die. It's just like, oh my god. Anyway, Tony, keep going, keep going.
Tinnitus starts playing. Yeah, so I agree with that. I will also say that in all of these cases, something that we've, I think, all been proponents of for many years is that simplifying things down so that you can have a consistent gameplay against a larger percentage of the cast is going to reflect in you having more consistent results. And I think that still applies here. As Charles said, rolling the dice is still very good in Ultimate. I've been a proponent of that for years. It's being possibly correct here doesn't necessarily mean I'm right, but I'm still gonna stick to it. I'm gonna put that where my money is. Where players ask me for advice on how to improve, I'm gonna look at how they can better stack their risk reward. I'm gonna focus less on, oh, well, this is how you keep your opponent from beating you, and focus more on, this is how we're gonna win games with Smash Brothers. So I think that this is generally the winning formula to approaching. To be fair, I take this outside of Ultimate, so I don't think this is specific to Ultimate. And I'll also make another contentious claim that I think this would have applied to Smash 4 had Smash 4 been given the level of competition that Ultimate has had, 2 more years of lifespan, much larger brackets. I think we would see similar dynamics.
I agree.
And I think we would see similar delineations of gameplay patterns on that. So that's my take on that. I will also say that Kagaribi and Japanese tournaments in general tend to be inconsistent on their results for a large portion of it. And I don't think that this being one of those events necessarily means, oh, North America's washed or North America just can't hang with this or that. I don't think that's relative. I don't think that if we were to look at like the Japanese players who are mainstays or regularly make it near or to these top 8s who were not present, I don't think that's a mark against them either. And I think that if we were to look at it within that context from an analytic point, that it would look like, oh, Japan really fell off at this Japanese tournament where the Japanese won the tournament in the Japanese Grand Finals.
That's true.
It depends on which players you're looking at. So I think
for sure
that it's really easy to look at these and to create some sort of dramatic takeaway or some sort of narrative point. But as I said before, you can't just look at one thing and say, oh, well, this is almost always how it's going to play out. Like an event is not a sample size. I think all of the Japanese events that all North Americans have attended all together is still a pretty small sample size. So I don't think that there's a lot we can really do to judge, unfortunately. A difficulty within FGC in general and Smash in particular is that these sample sizes tend to be really small and really difficult to make actual serious conclusions from that we can act on. It's pretty much all just vibes, and then fortunately we've all been here for a long time. Like people like me predate Brawl even. So like when we've been around this long, we just start to see it and have intuitions. Having feelings is great. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are replicable insights or that they are accurate pattern recognitions. So when Timmy Lou Who on Twitter tells you that, oh, well, this is just how the way it goes, or this player fell off, or I guess this player really can't hang. This was his tournament to show up. Like that's just not how we can take away. That's not stuff we can take. We can't draw any conclusions from one or any other player's trajectory from where they are from Kagaribi results. And I'm saying this because I see a lot of Doomer results or, oh, I missed my final tournament. And from my perspective, there's like 3 more majors this month or something like that. There's MomoCon and Combo Breaker in a week or 2. There's CEO like a couple weeks after that. Like, come on, guys, this is being cartoonish.
Yeah.
You got Super Smash Con, which are trying to make the biggest Smash tournament. So like that's
Supernova, baby.
Supernova, yeah. Show Supernova. I mean, even for me, for my kind of like last thoughts here, I know we're gonna wrap up. I mean, even look at Civil War, right? Imagine if you took Civil War and you're like, up, that is literally just how Smash 4 was. No. we had like things.
I think, in fact, I
You know
think
what I mean?
Civil War was
Like,
the furthest removed from how Smash 4 was out of all.
I mean, a billion %, and that
There was
therein
no.
lies the point, right? Like,
Was there any
you know,
cloud in top 8? I know there was one Bayo. No cloud.
and you know, like the
Speaking of
the
mix-up.
two big players not doing well, right? Like it was
Right.
such a weirdo tournament. So like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and
you're
I mean that
so
drives
right,
home the point.
so right,
Yeah,
Ben.
and we have so many characters, right, in this game that are even like more capable and strong as well too, right? So like there's just so many factors, right, that come to like the scale of these tournaments. And I think with kind of what Tony was alluding to as well, like this game is still a game, even if we see it as less balanced than before. Look at the next fighting game over or this game over. I mean, most games that even have remotely the amount of characters, like, in their fighting game, trust me, it's like 6 of them freaking matter. Everyone else is just just to make the aesthetics look pretty in the character select screen. You know what I'm saying?
Filling up the
And
character select. Man.
yeah, just fluffing up. All right, make it look nice for everybody. For little Timmy, he buys the game and will
Yeah,
probably
put it
play
on the
twice,
box.
right?
50
Exactly,
characters.
exactly. That's really what it's for. But like,
Mm.
we're looking at this top 64, and like we're seeing an insane assortment of characters in comparison to a plethora of other games, right? So, all this to say that I think that obviously there's a lot of beauty and magic that comes with being like the biggest tournament, and like who stood up and like made it happen and blah blah blah. But um at the end of the day, like there's so many characters here. It's a tournament, right? Sometimes it's gonna be your day, someday it's not. It is what it is, right? There's some players that I know for a fact would probably play a lot better, and they got cooked. And it's like part of it is like, hey, their opponent was playing well and they weren't playing well today, and that was all the difference, right? If I went ahead and I canvassed across all the tournaments they've been to and their level of play, or maybe 9 times out of 10 it would beat this person. But you know what? It was that one today. So, and it happened to be Kagaribi. So it is what it is. But I really had a lot of fun watching Kagaribi.
Same.
I mean, shout out to Charles. We did a throne watch party, and he was holding it down big time too, and it was cool to pop in for a little bit. And yeah, I mean, stuff is like it was just good to see some quality Smash, right? And see people excited, and a lot of players who are kind of now in that transition period and kind of stepping away from competing for now for Smash, like Riddles. I know Tweak said like, this is kind of that was a big one for him. And like just seeing other characters, like people just be like, hey, I'm gonna play my heart out. We'll see how it happens. Today may be the day, it may not, but I'm just gonna let it rock because I love this game. I love playing it, So it's good to see. I'm also excited at this, like the quote unquote the end of Ultimate in comparison to like the end of Smash 4, and even like how kind of like Brawl ended, right? Where like there's a lot of optimism. I think the scene is still going strong. I mean, obviously we had a lot of devastation that happened through Ultimate's lifespan, but people are finding ways. People are loving the game. People are able to find some sponsors and make things happen too. I don't know how long LG is going to be staying around or whatever it may be. There's always a timeline on these teams and stuff because of just the nature of esports, and a lot of it, to be honest, is not sustainable. But we're not going to dive into the business of that, but it's a thing. So to
You can
see,
tell by now.
regardless, yeah, hopefully if you've been paying attention. But I think regardless, it's in a really good space for the quote unquote end of a game, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. When we do get an announcement for a new title, which signs point towards. Obviously not 100% confirmed, but signs point towards it. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see what comes next and kind of the evolution of the scene, and more people, new players, new TOs, new coaches come through and step up and kind of carry on the mantle in that way, right? So it's been nice to kind of just observe it in that way, But it's kind of my final thoughts on everything.
Ramses, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess for all the people who feel bad about the game, seeing the characters succeed that succeed, like Steve, Min, Game Watch, because they feel like they kind of just do their own thing. Um, do the same, man. Like, it's your fault if you see that it's a successful formula and you don't apply it. And so, like, if you want to win a race, what's the best way to win a race? Is to have a really fucking fast car. And so, like, upgrade your fucking car, dude. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, if they can establish a dynamic and they can play around it, like, you can do the same. And I know, like, you're playing Lucina and you're, like, so obsessed with having fundies and, like, oh, my spacing is gonna be perfect, bro. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Just, like, find a dynamic that your character's good at, play it, force the opponent to respect it. And if they don't respect it, kill them. Make your car fast. Make it do one thing really well. And then when it does one thing really well, then you can do all the rest. But like, there's this like fucking mind virus, right? Like, oh, my character's funnies, bro. Like, shut up, man. It's 2025. Roy's not funnies, dude. You jab side B someone they die at 60. I'm sorry, bam. Roy's not funnies, man. You jab side.
Well, I know that. I do it. You think I'm a person who's obsessed with that fun? No, I love that. That's reality. I gotta hit people with reality. They need to know.
You're right. You're not the target audience. But like you're right. Like if your dynamic might not be like the level of like Steve Wall and Up Tilt, like yeah, sure. But like you have to have a dynamic. You have to have some like you have to know what your strengths are and to build something around it. And if they don't respect that shit, you gotta kill them. And like I said, right? Like if you're playing a sword character, you might not get a lot of guaranteed reward, or you might not be a Min who like even if they don't get reward, they just get back into like neutral, quote unquote, and they get to play around their strengths again. Do the same, right? Like Tony said, positional play. Okay, well maybe you won't get like a lot of guaranteed reward, but at least like for most of those characters, that means that you can position in a way that if you don't get reward, you get back to a strong situation. And if you hit them, don't get a follow-up hit, put pressure on them, and don't get a like at that point you just got outplayed. Like at that point, like skill issue. So what I'm trying to say is like there's still a lot more Smash to be played, and there's still a lot more to be developed. And I think instead of resisting trends that you like don't like, actually ask like why do you not like it. If you don't like the game when it's played that way, then like that's fair, right? But for most people, I feel like the reason they don't like it is because they have like this idea of fundies and like it's a very like social cultural kind of thing. And then there are people that have legit complaints, right? Like I'm not here to tell you that Steve is not a stupid character. He's a stupid character. But I think a lot of it is just like a very social cultural thing. And I think taking a step back and saying like, hey, if I want to win, if I want to succeed, why are these not skills that I'm learning? Because I promise you there's going to be a new Smash game and you're going to need these skills all over again. And when Smash is done and you're moving on with your life, you still need those skills. If you're going to go out in the job market and you're like, I just want to get hired for my skills. I don't care about my like CV. I don't care about like my letter. Like I don't care about I'm good at my thing. You're not going to get fucking hired. You're going to have to learn skills to get you to where you want to be. You're going to have to commit to changing your perspective on that. And if you get down to it, and I speak from experience, these skills, once you get into like the weeds, they're the same thing as what you've been doing, just with a little bit of a different packaging, and they're just as interesting to develop. It's just like you gotta accept it. That's all it is. So that's my final little bit of a rant.
The first steps are always the most difficult to make when you are adjusting to a new approach to applying the specific skill of learning to enjoy something new, of learning to enjoy something that you specifically have preconditioned yourself to believe is bad. Like if it's, oh, I don't enjoy up tilts, I'm a down tilt kind of guy. I only like characters that come in off of down tilt.
I'm a problem solver, not a problem maker.
Yes. Amen. Like once you realize that you have that bias and you ask yourself, well, why do I feel this way? And is it possible for me to condition myself to enjoy doing what I think is more effective? I recommend learning to do so because that is a universal life skill. That is your ability to learn to discipline yourself, so it speaks. If you can do that, you can feign having discipline just by learning to enjoy something.
Yep.
Or learning to be too lazy to do the things that are anything else. It's all a matter of perspective and how you position yourself within that context. So with that said, I'm personally choosing to enjoy Ultimate more than I have ever enjoyed it. I am personally choosing to continue thinking productive thoughts and choosing to do productive actions that take me toward my personal goals, advancing, with that being defined as skills that I and other people who I trust to evaluate skills as, I think the skill is valuable. I think the skill would be present in the hypothetical best coach or the hypothetical best TO or if those skills are something that I don't have or that I know, if I'm being honest with myself, could be better developed, then I'm going to iterate and practice and train those, and I'm going to like it because it's better to like it and do it than it's not going to. And I have the skill to choose to learn to enjoy things and to learn to enjoy training in specific training. And so I will do so because it's going to make me more effective. And the reason it makes me more effective is because I'm going to be more consistent at training and applying it. I'm not going to have some end goal. There is no going to be some final event for me when I'm done with Smash. It's just going to be one day I'm just going to wake up and I'm either not going to be alive anymore and I'll just be not alive awake, or I just will realize, oh, hey, I'm not going to another event. But there's nothing beneficial to actually giving yourself an ending arc or saying this is my end point. If you are wanting your process to be sustainable, it's something that you need to be every day, not do every day, although you do need to do it every day, but it's who you are. It's who you identify as. And like everyone in this call, we're all going to be doing this same time next year because that's who we are. That's what we do. And it's not a matter of, oh, well, what if what if my least favorite player is winning all of the ultimate tournaments? Who does care? It doesn't matter. It's a matter of, well, where am I going to be? Who am I? And is the person who I am the person who becomes who I'm going to be, who I want to be? And as long as those things connect, you're doing fine as a player. And I think this is particularly important to note going on because of the finality sentiments that I keep hearing, keep seeing. If you are telling yourself, oh, this is Ultimate's last ride, or regardless, if you are planning on interacting with the next Smash game, but you've just counted yourself out of Ultimate, you're not setting yourself up for the best self you could be with that game. Even if it's a matter of not playing the characters that you want to play, just going through the actual act, the learning process is the same process that you'll apply in both games. Just like Bam said, just like Charles said, just like Ramsey said, it's the same process regardless of what game you're playing. Stick to it, have fun with it. You can choose to have fun with it. If you're choosing to not have fun with it, then that's fine. Maybe you like being miserable. For the rest of us, though, I love Smash. I love Ultimate in particular, and I'm looking forward to the next Smash game.
Yeah, same. Yeah, Kagaribi was insane. I think it gave us a lot of information. It gave us a lot of wonderful sets to watch, and I think we saw a ton of great players make it very, very far. Obviously, Akola clutching up and winning the whole thing from losers. So, I mean, we definitely have to shout out Akola for winning the tournament. I think Akola, I mean, obviously plays a very strong character, but that's what you have to do to win a very large tournament and a very stacked tournament. You have to have a character that can deal with various information or various matchups and stuff like that. So I will say my only gripe is I think if Hurt was in this bracket, he would have tremendously changed it. I think he is a very good player against Steve specifically, and like really he just has to dodge Mia. But I mean, other than that, still like amazing tournament. That was like my one and only gripe as just an enjoyer of the game. I wanted to see every player that could have won the tournament attend the tournament, and I think we're really close to that. Like essentially one player off type beat.
Wasn't that the reason why Civil War was higher in terms of the
points,
the amount of like top players?
Yeah, actually don't know.
I think that it was going to like Kagaribi was going to be higher, but then because Hurt had to step out, it wasn't.
Well, the thing about Civil War is like we weren't tracking top 100, top 150. When you look at Kagaribi, it's like, oh, this much out of the top 100 or this much out of the top 150. Like Civil War, we're just tracking the top 50 players.
Top 50,
and so it's like you could compare it to just like top 50 to top 50, but I still, I'm not too sure how the math works out on that.
Also tripling the sample of the overall entrance.
True.
Yes.
At least so
far.
Yeah. Just the attendees, and then like Japan has like a crazy high floor, and it's crazy to see everything come like this tournament just be in Japan in general. So, and the meta is definitely moving in an interesting direction. But I will say something that we really haven't seen in Ultimate unless we include like Leo's dominance in terms of like characters winning tournaments is we haven't seen the meta, stay the same for long. Obviously,
True.
we have patches and stuff like that, but even we haven't had a patch for quite some time. And like I would say the only meta trajectory that everyone kind of guessed or thought that was going to happen is we're going to see more Steve players getting higher results, and
Not even for the
that is
first year or two.
Yeah, but that only recently happened, really, Steve, coming
yeah. Now
to his own.
now we're seeing it. Now we're
Yeah.
seeing it, like Carmelo getting top 8 and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So we are seeing other Steve players get higher results, because at first it was just like Aquila just came out the gate swinging. We were like, whoa, what the? And then like Onin, Syrup, and a bunch
Yeah.
of other Steve players started getting really good results. So yeah, I mean, I guess.
Also, Steve's still underrated, in my opinion, by the way.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's another thing too. I feel like I go on a lot of Steve rants. It's like, yeah, I don't like the character really, but I also don't think people realize like really,
Yeah.
really how strong this character is. And I just want to make it very known that the concept, like, you change the game a lot when with a move like block. But yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I just think it's something that most people will just see, and they don't really understand how much impact that move has.
I
Right.
always say,
But
man, you're playing a platform
yeah.
fighter and someone's building a platform.
Steve players figured out that
Just have
Stone
it.
Block is one of the most powerful tools in the game and not actually a junk resource, and back air is now much better. Who knew?
Yeah,
Surprise.
Stoneblock got hella
Yeah.
health. But yeah, no matter what, I love Smash, and I want to see the meta progress, and I want to be there to witness it. I think it's just very fun to be able to be a historian of the game and be like, okay, I was there, for this and that and this and that. Like the only thing that I kind of feel like I don't have that for is Brawl. Like I was there, but like I was like in an island that we ran at each other. So it was like
You were
I
studying
was
the
there,
blade.
but yeah,
Yo,
it was
Hawaiian Brawl
very
was
different.
actually hype. You were playing a
That
different game.
that shit was not Brawl.
You guys
It
were
really
playing
was.
combo
Brawl.
video simulator, bro. It was
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
You guys,
Super-
to be
super
fair, you
different
guys
vibe.
played a better version than we did. I'm not gonna lie, man.
We had hella fun.
Definitely did.
We had hella
Did.
fun. Wasn't getting planked by
By
what's his
Meta
name?
Knight, yeah.
Can't relate.
But yeah, today was a really fun episode. Obviously, Kagaribi, a very impactful tournament. Very huge in terms of just like culture for Smash, culture for Japan. I think a lot of players experiencing Japan for the first time was something that I'm happy to see. Even if you didn't get the best results and you went to Kagaribi, I hope you had a really good time and you got to enjoy Japan. And yeah, I think that's going to be it for this episode. If you guys did like the content and enjoy it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Peace.